Welcome back, everybody, to the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast, a Wednesday special today. Thank you, Jody, for recording today. My daughter's birthday is tomorrow. She turns 7. So outside of the rewind, watching the football, I will not be watching Thursday Night Football tomorrow because of the birthday. But when they go down, the kids are asleep, I'll turn football back on. We'll get some football on. But in the meantime, we're going to be walking through Thursday Night Football, of course, tonight, answering any start-sit questions as well. And then we're going to kind of run through some of the shakeups in the NFL that have happened over the last 7 days. Talk about the backfields moving forward inside of inside Seattle, inside Houston. We'll debate some rookies. We'll debate some other running backfields, and we'll talk about what the Cardinals are going to do with the loss of Marquise Brown and with them getting DeAndre Hopkins back. So quick show tonight, but figured we'd get something on the books. Jody, what do you make of this Thursday Night Football? We've had some really ugly football on Thursday. Do we expect the same this week out of the Cardinals and Saints game? And you just finished you're finishing your write-up, or you just finished your write-up, but why don't you walk me through your thoughts on this Thursday Night Football?
Well, gosh, dude, we need a good game. We need some offense after 2 just brutal games in a row. But the more I looked at things, unfortunately, the more I'm on the under in this game. I know that sounds terrible, but it is 45, so there's still the possibility that we can have some entertaining things back and forth. But there's just so many question marks, in particular for the Saints right now. Like right now, at this moment, we don't even know who's going to be their quarterback. I'm assuming, and in my write-up, that it's going to be Dalton. It just makes more sense. But both he and Jameis Winston were removed from any injury situations for this week. So, Dennis Allen's being kind of coy about who he's going to start. Like I said, my assumption is they're just going to march forward with Andy Dalton. But the Saints, they're really banged up. They're missing their tackle now. Their top cornerback is not going to play in this game. Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas have already been rolled out of this game. So, my initial expectation was I thought I didn't know this until I looked it up. The Arizona Cardinals have lost 8 consecutive home games. They have not won at home since October 24th last year. They beat the absolutely putrid Houston Texans last year, 31-5, and they have not won at home again. That's pretty remarkable. And this is a team that's kind of known for having an explosive offense. But with that, and then with the Saints being banged up, my first initial thought was that Arizona was going to win. But when I kind of dug through the numbers and all that, the Saints have been really, really good on Thursdays. I think they are 10-1 against the spread in their last 11 Thursday games, which is pretty awesome. But the under, again, speaks to me. And Arizona has been a team that's hit a lot of unders. I think Roto World had something like in their last 40 games, 64% of the time Arizona's gone under. They've been the under 1-4-1 so far this season, and the Saints have been pretty good under. So I hope that DeAndre Hopkins is able to come back and make a big splash. I actually think I'm going to be pretty high on him in my projections for this week. I feel like with Marshawn Lattimore being out of this game, he's got a huge advantage, and my guess is that he's going to be peppered. I believe that's in my write-up, that word. I like that word. He's going to be just peppered with targets in this game. The Saints are a really, really good defense, second overall at limiting tight ends, so I don't feel like this is going to be a big Zach Ertz game. And what we didn't talk about yet was the Cardinals traded for Robbie Anderson. I don't know how much involvement he'll have with such short time to prepare. They just traded for him yesterday. They've got to turn around 2 days later and play a game. He may not be up to snuff with the playbook, or maybe he's used just as a decoy role. It's really hard to project. They could use him right now with Hollywood Brown being out for at least a month. But I don't know. My initial thought in this game was the Saints, who are slight. They're 1 or 2 point favorites.
Yeah, I don't have the spread in front of me right now, but I do know The Saints are actually coming in as the 26th ranked defense versus wide receivers right now. The Cardinals are coming in to this slate as the 9th best defense against wide receivers. Do you think with that on the books, even though Lattimore is probably going to be there for the Saints, do you think Hopkins is going to be able to make a big splash week 1? Do you think he'll get shadowed by Lattimore? What's your thought process there?
Lattimore's out. He's not playing this game.
That's right. Yeah, you're right.
I'm so big on Hopkins. The Saints, it's pretty bad for them after with Lattimore removed from the game. You're going to you look at their slot corners. One thing I wrote about with my Rondale Moore write-up is their slot corner is I want to say Pro Football Focus has him ranked 138th at cornerback. So you got to like that little matchup for Rondale Moore. However, he's not a guy you can trust yet. He's averaging like 8 yards a catch. They're using him really close to the line of scrimmage. I don't see his role changing with Hollywood Brown out because you've got now Hopkins who can kind of replace that perimeter threat, and now you just acquired Robbie Anderson, who again is a downfield deep threat. So that's going to just mean a lot more short area targets and maybe some creative backfield touches for Rondale Moore. I don't have a problem putting him in my lineup this week, but again, when we kind of put out our initial projections last week, I'll probably be pretty high on DeAndre Hopkins.
With Lattimore out, how bad do you think this defense really is? Do you think they're bottom 3, bottom 2 in the secondary?
No, they're probably in the bottom, say, 3rd of the league. Lattimore, he's had his ups and downs, so it's not like he is an every week shutdown cornerback unless he's playing against Mike Evans. Other than that, he's had some some up and down games. So it's a loss for them. They're thin in that area, but I don't see them as being like a putrid defense. And in this case, even if they are, can we trust Kyler Murray to take advantage of it? Because what we've seen in 6 games from Kyler Murray is while he is the fantasy quarterback 6, he only has 6 touchdown passes in the 6 games. He's doing fine as a runner, but he's not been able to take advantage of secondary. So, until we see him put together a game or two where we're like, okay, this looks like, Kyler Murray when he's not worried about getting his XP on whatever Call of Duty or Halo or whatever that meme is. And you know what? I think that that is a possibility that we start to see that now with Hopkins back. Even though, Murray, Hollywood Brown's up there when it comes to target share and targets in the league, but maybe it's just that familiarity that he had with Newt that kind of resurrect his fantasy value. This is kind of it's kind of an elimination game for these teams because both of them at 2 and 4. You drop to 2 and 5. That's a deep hole to dig yourself out of.
Yeah, Marquise Brown right now 64 targets. He's 4th best in the league, only behind Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Cooper Kupp. So that's elite company to be in. We're looking at that's an average of 10 targets plus a game, and so I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to slide in, get a lot of that. Rondale Moore is still going to be heavily involved, which is great for best ball because I know a lot of us drafted him for that first 6 weeks. And then when he got hurt with the hamstring, it kind of delayed that start. And we've started to see him kind of pick it up, which has been nice. And he's starting to become pretty fantasy relevant. With Brown out now, Rondale Moore, I think, maintains that fantasy relevancy and is going to be utilized quite a bit in the absence of Marquise Brown as well. I think, and I talked about this earlier on another podcast today. I recorded with Theo from the GOAT District, and he's asking about my thoughts on DeAndre Hopkins. And I think it's going to be good for this offense because without DeAndre Hopkins, they didn't really have a lot of 50-50 ball catchers, right? Marquise Brown, more of that deep threat. They had Rondale Moore, who's, really undersized. Ertz, if you consider him, I don't consider him a 50-50 ball catcher, but they're going to be able to throw the ball up a little bit more, take some more chances in the end zone with DeAndre Hopkins, which is his specialty coming down with that ball. And I think it's going to benefit, Kyler Murray and this offense just in general because they're going to be able to take more risks and whether they pan out or not. But I think that you have one of the best 50-50 ball catchers in the NFL in DeAndre Hopkins, and I think it's going to benefit this offense. So very excited to see him back in the offense. Very excited to see him back for football, especially with some of the rosters I built at FFWC, where he was my 4th or 5th wide receiver. And I said, hey, as long as I'm 3-3, when he gets back, I should be in a pretty good spot. And so
I'm in the exact same predicament. So it's like great relief. I've had several trade offers come in the last in the last couple of days. I'm like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I've held him for 6 weeks. Everyone, get the hell out of here. Like, he's mine now. And he's back, and he's. So, how high are you on DeAndre Hopkins this week? It's kind of hard to just throw him into the top, 12. But when you look at the target share that Marquise Brown had,
I think when we look at things a little bit more tomorrow and finalize things, it's going to be around that area for me. I want to say his ECR is around wide receiver 20 when I took a glance at that. And my initial thought was, I think maybe a little higher than that. You mentioned that Hollywood Brown is averaging about 10 targets a game. Well, I looked back, and that's typically when looking back over from 2020 onward through last season, that's about the average that DeAndre Hopkins typically is getting a week. So I feel like, while their games aren't the same, it feels like the role, he's just sliding into that role. And like you just mentioned, Hopkins has that size and he's got more bulk, so he ends up being better contested catch candidate and a little bit less on the deep threat. But I think it's something that it's been sorely missing. I think in that offense, and I'm hopelessly optimistic that Kyler can turn things around and Hopkins can be the main part of it. And whether it's this week or next week, that if we can see a little bit of the upside, because Robbie Anderson is one of the most volatile players in football, but quarterbacks haven't done him much help over the last couple of seasons. So maybe if they can figure out how to get more moderate usage out of Robbie Anderson, rather than just using him exclusively as a deep threat, can we try to use him in other areas of the field? The Cardinals could certainly use that.
So it's interesting because consensus, you hit the hammer. Right now he's sitting at number 20, and I haven't adjusted him in the rankings yet. I'll do so tonight and tomorrow morning before I send him over to you for the Thursday rankings that we publish. But there's some names just ahead of him, and I just want just a quick brief. Just say over or under when I say the player. Like, if you think he's going to finish above the player, say over. If you think he's going to finish under the player, say under. Deontay Johnson.
I'm going to say over. I don't like the Steelers quarterback situation right now.
Okay, Alan Lazard.
I'm still gonna say over.
Okay, Christian Kirk.
Where's Jacksonville playing this week? Against the Giants. Yeah, I'd rather start.
Okay, Amari Cooper.
I'd still rather start Hopkins. I keep getting Cooper wrong because I keep thinking he's going to have this dud game. Actually, I hit him exactly right last week. I had him as my wide receiver 23. That's precisely what he was. So I finally got it right. Maybe I'm coming to it. It just feels like even Kyler throughout his struggles is still significantly better than everyone has a quarterback. So
Cortland Sutton and whoever plays quarterback in Denver.
Right now, I would probably lean Hopkins because we don't know what's going on at quarterback for Denver. But if Russell Wilson is back, which I don't know, is that much of an upgrade, actually?
Not much of an upgrade.
Yeah, that's kind of like a situation where I think I'd take Hopkins 55% of the time.
Okay, T. Higgins.
Gosh, man, we have to wonder, just how healthy is T. Let's pretend he's healthy. He did get, I think, 10 targets last week.
Yep, he did get 10 targets.
Pretty appealing matchup at home against the Falcons, so I probably would lean Higgins there.
Okay, yeah, Higgins, just for kind of shits and giggles here, he's only finished inside the top 20 twice. Once was 16th. The second time was 3rd. He's finished 77th overall, 16th overall, 31st overall, 3rd overall, and 41st overall.
Sounds like Mike Williams.
And if you remember right, inside of the fade list, I mentioned T. Higgins in a podcast, I think, one time when we talked about his inconsistencies and his boom-bust weeks, and the reason why I thought he was being overdrafted in football. Best ball, it's fantastic, but
I made basically the exact same points about Mike Williams because to me it's exactly what we're seeing right now. Mike Williams has had 3 monster games and then he's had just 2 or 3 complete busts.
Yep, Mike Williams was the next name I was going to ask you about. Hopkins or Mike Williams. Finished 102 overall wide receiver position. Week 1, 8th against Kansas City. Week 2, 46 week 3, 4th week 4, 9th week 5, 68 last week against Denver. You going to take Hopkins or are you taking Mike Williams this week?
Let's see. Gotta remind me who the Chargers are playing.
Chargers are playing Seattle.
Ooh, that's a pretty good matchup.
You get Keenan Allen back this week, probably, they're saying.
Yeah, that actually would probably help Mike Williams. I feel like
exactly what I said today.
Coverage off of him. So I still probably would lean Hopkins because Mike Williams is one of the guys, Billy, that you and I didn't necessarily agree on this summer. Generally, we were in agreement on most guys, and we weren't it wasn't egregious.
It was like 10 spots.
Yeah, it wasn't anything huge. But what I don't like about Mike Williams is that inconsistency. That said, he was horrible last week, so it feels like a really good opportunity for him to rebound. So that's kind of a 50-50 thing.
Okay, and that's top 12 right there. So that puts him at the 12. You look at some of the players ahead of him, Jalen Waddle, who's battling an injury, who may or may not be here. And so Hopkins may hit the top 12 simply because of bye weeks as well. You look at big names out this week on bye. You have the Rams with Cooper Kupp. You have the Bills with Stephon Diggs, who also have Gabe Davis in the mix, who's been hot. Justin Jefferson is on a bye. A.J. Brown is on a bye. So a lot of big name wide receivers this week.
That's like the top 3 wideouts are unavailable.
Yeah, so
Diggs and Jefferson, there you go.
So by default, Hopkins might land inside the top 12 simply from an opportunity standpoint as well as a talent standpoint, and a pretty prime matchup against this banged up New Orleans Saints secondary. So enough of the Cardinals, and we're going to have even more Thursday Night Football tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll be sick of it by the middle of the first quarter. So let's go ahead and move on. I want to talk about the Seattle backfield. So when we take a look at the snap share inside Seattle, Kenneth Walker saw 69.1% of snaps. DJ Dallas did see the field. He saw 33.8% of snaps, although he only saw 2 carries. That being said, how do you think this backfield shakes up moving forward? DJ did see 3 targets though. So I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. So wrong week, 0 targets last week. So only two carries, 1 yard. Do you think this is going to remain a 70-30 split with Kenneth Walker? They also added Tony Jones late last week. Do you expect to see him on the field? Only reason I ask is we know Walker is the superior talent, but we look at Seattle and Pete Carroll is notoriously known for just screwing things up. Is Kenneth Walker going to be 70 or having 70% of snaps moving forward?
As long as he stays healthy, yes. I mean, this is like an attrition thing. I mean, you can't really rely on a DJ Dallas or if Travis Homer comes back. Tony Jones is a complete unknown. He's barely played when he's been in New Orleans just because he could never crack the depth chart. So he's complete unknown. Walker, the thing we all thought with Walker coming out of Michigan State was that he would fill in as a receiver. So I feel like as long as he's adequate in that area, now the Seahawks aren't going to throw a ton of passes to the running backs, but he doesn't have to come off the field for these third downs. This is more like a DJ Dallas is more of a change pace guy that can come in and he can do a little bit in pass protection and he can come in and do a little bit as a receiver. But as long as Kenneth Walker stays, I think, healthy and it stays in shape and he looked no worse for the wear last week. I feel like, he's already missed his time. He looks 100% healthy. He looked great. Last week, you saw him, and in the previous game, he was breaking off a lot of yards after contact. Just really exciting to watch. So I think Pete Carroll's done a pretty remarkable job having this team, thanks to Geno Smith's play, which has been kind of completely out of left field. But as long as Geno can stay the course and keep his 2 main wideouts involved, and the Seahawks can remain competitive, I don't see how you go away from this. I don't see anyone else right now on that roster that is a viable threat to rise up and take carries away from Kenneth Walker. And until, if Tony Jones turns out to be that guy, I'll be really surprised. But Travis Homer, whenever he comes back, he's never been able to do that opportunity before. So unless they acquire somebody else, which I don't see why they would.
So Kenneth Walker last week, 21 carries on the ground, 97 rushing yards, just missed the century mark. 4.6 average though, which is great. He did see 3 targets, 2 receptions, 13 more yards in the air. The crazy thing with Kenneth Walker is right now he leads the league in breakaway rate for running backs. It's a limited kind of share here. We're only at 44 carries, but still 11.4% breakaway rate. That's a data provided to you by Fantasy Data. And then he has a juke rate, which is also top 6. So it's number 6 in the league in juke rate, 44.2%. He's already has 23 evaded tackles on his 44 attempts. So he seems to definitely have the talent and the ability to, and we all knew that from coming out of college. I think he was both of our running backs 2s coming into the NFL behind Breece Hall, who is second on this list in breakaway rates. Where do you rank? This was a question I was asked earlier. I want to get your opinion on this. Where do you rank these rookie running backs moving forward between Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and Pierce?
Well, gosh, Breece Hall is probably your number 1 right now, even though you still are concerned with Michael Carter coming in occasionally stealing carries. Breece Hall was 2 weeks ago was a couple of long plays that he broke off, and then I guess maybe he was winded or they just took him out, and that's why Michael Carter punched in those touchdowns. Because had that situation not come off, then we would be talking about Breece Hall would have had that monster game where he might have scored both of those touchdowns, and we'd be talking about him as a potential top 5 running back overall. Gosh, that's a little hard to say because it feels like to me that right now the usage for Dameon Pierce and Ken Walker is about the same. Because you look at Walker last week, well, he was the only running back that even got targeted. He had a 10% target share, 70% rush share. That's pretty bonkers. And Pierce has kind of, as we've seen the season go on, we've seen him take more involvement in the passing game, and Rex Burkhead's hardly getting any touches at all anymore. So it feels like the usage is about the same there. So then you look at the overall quality of the offense, and you have to say that right now you have to lean towards Seattle. They're better at quarterback. They're much better at wide receiver than Houston. And it's a team that what's Seattle's record? 3-3. The Texans are 1-4-1. So I could see it going both ways. To me, even with the breakaway rate that you mentioned, Pierce is probably pretty respectable on that list. Feels like they're similar players, but I don't know. It feels like a slight lean on Walker right now. What do you think?
I gave a slight lean to Pierce simply because of the Geno Smith, not Geno Smith, simply because of the Pete Carroll, dilemma. It's just Pete Carroll. I don't trust the guy. And then you look back and he had that injury. It's hard to predict injuries, damn near impossible, but there's a chance just in the back of my head, it's there that he could tweak it, re-injure it. Right. So I give a slight lean to Pierce, although Walker has been looking, this last game looked great. The clear lead is Hall, I think. So I go Hall, Pierce, and then Walker, but that Pierce Walker is just like this. It could be flip-flopped.
That's a really good point because with Pierce, we've seen multiple games of him being good. And
yep.
Lovie Smith just came out this week and said his expectations are that Pierce should be a 20 carry running back, which
correct.
It's a nice vote of confidence in an offense that's going to be pretty bad. So it feels like at least in the first half of games, the Texans can afford to just hand the ball off to him really, really frequently. So.
Yeah, and then if you look at his usage the last couple games, the 2 weeks prior to the bye, so they had Rex Burkhead pretty heavily involved in the passing games weeks 1, 2, and 3. But as we kind of saw that change of guard where Pierce started just dominating the touches, he also started dominating the passing game. 6 targets in week 4, 5 targets in week 5. So week 6 had his bye. If that continues, if we can see 5 to 6 targets a game, 20 carries, that's a back end RB1. And It's just the offense just may not be able to support the fantasy points and get him in the red zone enough to be an RB1. But that type of usage, it's hard to argue against. You're talking about 25 touches a game at that point. If he's getting 20 carries, 5 targets, that's some serious usage. So I give a slight lean to Pierce, but it's ever so slightly. And I think Breece Hall pretty much, is the lead back in that discussion. Breece Hall has been surprisingly involved in the passing game. So we look at his usage right now. He already has 31 targets on the season. He is the running back number 5 behind Eckler, who has 49, Christian McCaffrey, who has 43, Leonard Fournette, who has 36, because he got 11 that one game, McKissick, who's at 33, Mixon, 32, and then Breece Hall at 31. So pretty tight group right there between McKissick, Mixon, and Hall. I expect to see his usage continue. He only saw 2 last week and 2 week 5. Those were his, previous lows. So if we can get closer to that 6 target range moving forward, Breece Hall, again, I think cements himself as kind of a high-end RB2, back-end RB1. He saw 9 targets week 1, 11 targets in week 3. Hopefully that usage continues. Let's go ahead. We've had some people patiently waiting. Lots of comments in here. I just want to run through these real quick. Salvatore says, good evening, hello, enjoy the show and site. Appreciate all the help. Should I pick up Romeo Doubs or Wan'Dale Robinson, I think is what he meant to say, and drop DJ Moore and or Pickens, or hold tight?
You can drop DJ Moore at this point, as far as I'm concerned, because he was atrocious last week, but he was also bad when he had Baker Mayfield under center. He's just been terrible all year. If your saving grace for DJ Moore, unfortunately, is I can't wait till Sam Darnold comes back. I mean, maybe, but what I'm saying is that seems risky. I mean, it's hard to say, just get rid of DJ Moore. But, I mean, gosh, I had to tweak projections this week, initially here at Full Time Fantasy, and I want to say he's around wide receiver 50. He's gotten to that point. Wan'Dale, interesting. Last week he didn't play, but maybe 25, 30% snaps. He was able to get into the end zone, which you'd like to see. Should be plenty of opportunities with the Giants because nobody's healthy or they just don't want to utilize who they have. That's funny that wasn't there a rumor today that the Giants were interested in trading for was it Pickens or Claypool? I don't know where I picked it up. Somebody said, and I was like, why would the Giants trade for a receiver? They're already not using the ones they have. Why would they want to? Why would they want to grab another one? But then again, this is a new staff. They didn't draft. They didn't sign
Golladay.
They didn't spend $84 million on Kenny Golladay. They didn't spend a second-round pick on or a first-rounder on Kadarius Toney. Wan'Dale's their guy, so it feels like vote of confidence for him probably moving forward.
So, man, I don't want to drop DJ Moore right now. Robbie Anderson just left. I know he's been horrible in this off. It just hasn't been good, but he's still sitting at 26.8% target share. That's a massive target share. So
he asked basically, at this point, are you valuing DJ Moore or Romeo Doubs? I think that was who he said.
Yeah, and so for me, Romeo's in a better offense. Don't get me wrong. So, honestly, I'm probably standing pat here. I'm probably holding DJ Moore and Pickens if there's another way to go, just because I want to see what this offense looks like without Robbie Anderson there now. And now, how many more targets is DJ Moore going to get? The fantasy points haven't been there, but opportunity is king in fantasy football. And if he's getting Look at this. So he had 6, 6, 6, 11, 8, and 7 targets. So let's just say he picks up 2 or 3 more a week with Robbie Anderson out. That's going to get him on an average of 8 to 10 targets a week. I mean, that type of volume, even if you're not getting the fantasy points, in due time, they're going to come. So I can't get rid of him at a 27% target share. And so I think I'm standing back here, or I'm going to be getting rid of Pickens, although Pickens has also seen an uptick in targets, 8, 8, and 6 the last 3 weeks. So, and he's an electric player. I was high on him in the draft. I had him slated inside my draft to go in round 1 to Green Bay. It didn't happen, but it was comforting knowing that Pittsburgh, who's usually pretty good identifying talent, picked up Pickens. But this is a tough one because I think it's a lateral move going from Dobbs to any of these three. And quite frankly, DJ Moore is probably the most talented of the group. He's just in a really bad scenario, but he's still getting a lot of targets. Pickens is debatably the most talented receiver of the three, but has just an atrocious quarterback situation. With Pickett in, I'm more intrigued with Pickens because they're throwing the ball more. He seems to be making more shots downfield, has that connection with Pickens playing more on the second team in camp. And so there's a lot of different dilemmas here. So I think I just stand pat, though. What about you, Jody? You're going to drop DJ?
Well, I'm looking at it right now. I'm kind of actually surprised at it because you started going off how many targets that Moore's gotten. He actually had the same number of targets as Christian Kirk, 44 on the season.
Yeah.
That's kind of surprising, which is one more than Drake London, one more than Devontae Smith. Kind of surprised to see that. I can understand. Yeah, give it 1 week.
Yeah.
See, like Billy said, see what happens to Carolina this week. I think we already know that PJ Walker's starting, which doesn't sound good. But
sounds better than Baker.
I don't know. Walker was pretty bad last week. The only points that Carolina even scored was from the defensive touchdown. So, okay, I'd say Willie, give it that week, like Billy said, and see if Moore's still getting you 8, 10 targets.
Okay, let's hammer through these next couple ones. Love the rankings in PPR is the order of playing these guys: Swift, ETN, Mostert, Hunt, Kenyon Drake, Jamal Williams. Rank those guys for me real quick, Jody.
It sounded like the right order. Us, we're Team ETN around here, and he started the trend in the right direction that we wanted to see. DeAndre Swift, that's an easy every week plug and play. He's active. Yep. He's in your lineup no matter who they're playing, no matter what. Who were the other choices?
Mostert, Hunt, and Drake doesn't even count, so just take him out of the equation.
Well, after last week, Mostert probably would lean with Mostert because in this situation with Miami, with Tua coming back, now there's a little upside back in the offense. And if Mostert still gets back to where he's getting 15 carries and multiple targets a week, you have to like that usage over Kareem Hunt, who's always going to be complementary to Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt, he still gets goal line touches. We know he gets plenty of targets or whatnot, but what you just mentioned was opportunity is king in fantasy football. And in this one right now, Mostert feels like he gets a lot more opportunities more consistently than.
They also face Pittsburgh, whose defense has been nearly non-existent. They're the 21st ranked defense versus the run, horrible in the secondary as well, though somehow they stopped Tom Brady last week. So I think that's in the correct order: Swift, ETN, Mostert, then Hunt. I'm not considering Drake because looks like Justice Hill practiced today. So I think that Drake is going to be relegated back to backup duties.
Don't trust that backfield. I know last week that Kenyon Drake came out of nowhere, had a 100-yard game, got into the end zone. Much to us that had J.K. Dobbins in our lineup somewhere, much to our chagrin that happened. But, you can't rely on that again. Mike Davis can come in next week and get 12 carries for 48 yards and touchdown, or J.K. Dobbins could come back in and punch in a couple of short yardage. It's a very fluid backfield right now, very hard to trust.
These next two comments are comments, not questions. Giselle's just congratulating me on holding number 2 spot. Lost the number 1 spot to Chris Rabin from Action Network. So I'm hoping to recapture it this week. It was a tough week last week, Jody. Jose letting everyone know that we have the answers. That's right. Thank you, Jose, for tuning in. Appreciate the loyalty. Interesting comment here. Hopkins not in playing shape. This is back to our talk about Hopkins. I think he is in playing shape. He's still been able to practice, or not practice, but he's still been able to work out and stuff. I think he's going to be fine. Top 3 quarterback streams this week. Right now, he's looking at Mariota, Tannehill, Brissett, Heineke, Zach Wilson, and Goff. Who's your top 3?
You can't start Zach Wilson. He's totally tanked. That passing game in New York. Tannehill is a guy I was probably higher on earlier this season. I thought he was a pretty good value because he can get in there and run a little bit. But you know, with 5 games in the books now for the Titans, you know, I don't know that we can rely on Tannehill too much. What were the other picks?
The other ones were Mariota, Tannehill, Brissett, Taylor Heineke, Wilson, and Goff.
All tough matchups. I mean, you think Goff, who he still is around a QB1 territory even after that one terrible game, but you can't they're coming out of bye. They're healthier now, but they're traveling to Dallas, who has one of the most one of the elite defenses in the league. That's not a particularly appealing matchup. Same thing with Tannehill. Like I said, they're coming off a bye, but playing at home against the Colts.
Yeah, Dallas top 7 against the quarterback position. They are top 16 versus wide receivers. It's a tough matchup. I do like, though, he gets Swift back. He has Amon-Ra St. Brown back. They got Chark back. They got the full arsenal back. I'm probably going Goff here of all these streamers here.
Probably deserves the benefit of the doubt for what he did the first 4 games for Detroit. And like I said, their last game was I think they got shut out right before the bye. If not, if you don't want to take that chance, maybe with what Mariota is doing on the ground, he certainly isn't doing it from volume as a passer. And I keep waiting for that dud game to come out of Mariota because they're just not passing the ball. And if he doesn't break off a couple of long runs a game or punch in a touchdown, you're talking about a guy who's going to put bottom 5 fantasy numbers up. But he keeps managing to come through and break off those runs, and he's getting into the end zone via his legs. So that would probably be the 2 that it would come down to for me.
Okay. Next one we have is McLaurin or Rondale Moore this week.
Like I mentioned, Rondale Moore is going to be facing, I forget the cornerback's name, but he's ranked 138th according to Pro Football Focus, and their slot corner. So volume standpoint, you like Moore. I feel like his upside is pretty capped. He's not really being used downfield. What we've always liked about Rondale Moore is his tackle breaking, his run after catch. This is something that he brought back to college, and in the little time that he's been active here in the NFL, you see glimpses of that on film and when you watch the Red Zone channel. So, who was the other choice? Because 1 second.
McLaurin.
Gosh, McLaurin's been a bit of a disappointment for me. Maybe things get better with Taylor Heineke, under center, but I don't feel like I'd necessarily have to take that chance. Like maybe I'd want to see that first. Green Bay is a pretty solid defense. I probably would want to see. I would need to personally give me a day. Let me go back and look at how Heineke favored McLaurin last year, because a lot of times when you see a reserve quarterback come in, all they do is just throw the ball to their number 1 receiver, which feels about right for him. But I mean, he did play. Didn't Heineke pretty much play the whole season last year?
Yeah, they didn't really have a number 2 last year because Curtis Samuel was hurt, Logan Thomas got hurt, so it was all Terry McLaurin last year, and they utilized the running backs.
In a situation that again, McLaurin's probably the upside play. Maybe he shows connection, or maybe he finally gets into the end zone or whatnot. But Moore feels like, to me, maybe a higher floor just on fear. I'm figuring this is probably another 8 to 10, maybe even more touches for Rondale Moore in this game.
Okay, yeah, I'd say that's probably about accurate. I slightly lean McLaurin. I think that Rondale Moore is going to have probably more targets, but the boom bust plays of Terry McLaurin, I mean, he's always good for a 50-yard score if he's hit stride. Although they do play Green Bay, and Green Bay's got a pretty good secondary. So I'm going to look at the cornerback matchups and see who's going to be shadowing him. But I slightly lean McLaurin right now, but I'm going to do some more research. So whoever asked that question, David, why don't you follow back up with us on Saturday in Discord, or even tomorrow in Discord? And we'll be happier to answer that question with some more statistics to back it up, rather than just our gut feelings. Trade question here: Amon-Ra and Aaron Jones, or Swift and London? I'd go Amon-Ra and Aaron Jones.
Yeah, that's a Amon-Ra St. Brown is pretty significantly better than Drake London right now. In particular, you're talking just sheer volume in this offense, and the difference between Swift and Jones. It feels like Swift is the best player in this particular deal.
I think so.
If he stays healthy.
Yeah.
But
Amon-Ra's up there too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lean the Amon-Ra side. If you're running back needy and you want to go Swift, I'm not gonna knock it, but I think it's pretty fair offer. Honestly, I think it's a fair trade. It's a good trade. I think it just depends upon your team construction and what your needs are. Let's go. This one's a long one. Let me read this. Josh Reynolds, the current week wide receiver 30 PPR scored 12. Is it because of injury? Okay, hold up. The current wide receiver 30 PPR scored 12 and 60 points when Amon-Ra St. Brown and Chark played weeks 2 and 3. Everyone has him around wide receiver 50 this week. Is it because of injury? So I guess they're asking about Josh Reynolds. Yeah, Josh Reynolds just dropped this week because he was the only receiver that was on the roster those given weeks. Now you have Amon-Ra St. Brown back, you have Chark back, you have Swift back, so the opportunity share just isn't going to be there. So that's the answer to that question.
I mentioned that my expectation there with Josh Reynolds is that when Jameson Williams is active, that Josh Reynolds' snaps are probably going to disappear pretty quickly.
Yeah, if not altogether. Let's answer one or two more questions, and then let's wrap it up. I know we both have a lot of work to do on the backside. So let's take a look here. This is an interesting one. So are you interested in Terrace Marshall? No Greg Dortch for me, but Terrace Marshall, Greg Dortch, Tyquan Thornton in a deep league with him having Hollywood out. Which ones are you focusing on here?
I mean, Dortch is his role's completely disappeared.
Yep, it's gone.
It's gone. And with Terrace Marshall, I mean, sure, he should see an increase in snaps and whatnot, but we've been banging on Carolina this whole podcast, so it feels like you're the second or third guy in line for targets on that offense. It's not really appealing. I mean, in New England, a very erratic usage of their wide receivers. I like that, Thornton debuted and got into the end zone, but one as a rusher and one as a receiver. But I don't want to overemphasize that or overreact to the fact that he came out of nowhere and scored two touchdowns. But it feels like, at least with him, there's more like potential upside. I think things should stabilize a little bit when Mac Jones gets back under center. But you know what? Maybe New England should stick with Bily. He's actually been pretty good.
Yeah, he's been great. And you look at Tyquan Thornton's interesting though. So he's got the speed, 4.2840. He's the burst scored 93rd percentile. Or 90th percentile, speed scored 93rd percentile, catch radius 85th percentile. So he has the metrics to succeed. It's just the question, you hit the hammer on the nail, is can they get him the ball here in New England? If they utilize him like they did, though, with a little bit on the ground, a little bit in the air, I think at this group, with or without that usage, to me, he's the most intriguing one of these three. I would go there of these three that you have. But I think he has the opportunity to start taking on a larger share of snaps inside New England. So rumor on the streets is teams are asking about Kendrick Bourne. You have Jacoby Myers, who hasn't been healthy this year. Devontae Parker, who is just Devontae Parker. That's his MO, is getting hurt every year. Thornton just got back off injury, made his debut, but already saw 57.1% of snaps. So you have to think that's the floor. If it continues to climb, if he can get in that 60 to 70 range in the second game, closer to 80% by the third game, we could be talking about, the number 1 or 2 option here in New England behind Jacoby Myers.
You could easily be talking about a weekly wide receiver 4 right there.
Yep. And so I'd say out of this group, it's easily Thornton. Marshall has a little bit more intrigue because of the Robbie Anderson trade, but Greg Dortch is just, you can't roster him at this point. Last question of the day. Pick one, or we'll do last two actually, because there's 2 left. Pick one: Jacoby, Dylan, Jody, Dobbs. Leaning Jacoby. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can't like what we've seen out of the way Green Bay's offense has worked at all, but in particular with their backfield use, it's just been very frustrating, and they're just not getting anything going there. So Jacoby Myers, he's clearly going to be the number one target guy there. I'd like to get a little more. But you know what? Even if Mac Jones returns, I feels like he's still going to lead New England in targets and whatnot. And again, it comes down to consistent opportunity. It feels like Jacoby Myers would be the way to go with that one.
Okay, I lean Jacoby here as well. Last question we have is, would you drop MVS for Zay Jones or Tyler Boyd? Oh, man, we're down the deep here. I would drop him for Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd, sure. He should be rostered.
Okay, I think that's it, Jody. Any closing statements before we get out of here?
No, I got to, like you mentioned, I got to get up early tomorrow, but I've got a ton of work to put in there, so got to keep grinding.
All right. Well, appreciate you, Jody, hopping on with me today on Wednesday. Everybody have a good night. Reach out to us on Discord with any questions that you have. We'll see you all back here on Saturday when I do the injury updates and answer your start sit questions. Have a good night.